This video is sponsored by VESSI. As the tagline of Ridley Scott's Alien famously declared, "In space, no one can hear you scream." And in the case of 2011's Apollo 18, in space, no one can hear your negative criticisms. Released during the height of the paranormal activity craze, Apollo 18 was considered just another low-budget found-footage Hollywood horror dumped at the tail end of the summer season to make a weekend buck, before floating endlessly into the dark, forgotten abyss. Set near the end of the space race between the USA and USSR in 1974, Apollo 18 tells the story of a three-man crew sent on a top-secret mission by the Department of Defense to establish radars on the moon to monitor Soviet Union activity, specifically in the event they decide to engage in warfare, given the increasing Cold War tensions. However, as expected, nothing goes to plan, as once two of the men arrive on the moon while the other surveys from orbit. Aliens. What, were you expecting something else? Yeah, look, before we get into this, I will concede that Apollo 18's negative reception wasn't unfounded. It was pretty much a by-the-numbers found-footage horror that ultimately relied on the same repetitive gimmicks and scares that were popular at the time. But with that said, out of the oversaturation of found-footage flicks out there, I'm going to be that guy who says that Apollo 18 was done dirty, because at the very least, it tried to do something stylistically different with its setting and atmosphere that, when watched in the right conditions, can be a very immersive experience. I benefited from seeing Apollo 18 in the theater, so naturally my senses were greatly heightened, allowing the dynamic visual style and brooding sound design of the janky old cameras, heavy breathing of spacesuits, and eerie ambiguous noises feel much more pronounced and impactful. Seriously, like Cloverfield, this is a found footage film I highly recommend watching in the dark with the best sound system available, because even just the various empty shots of space are profoundly unnerving at times. The film does a brilliant job at capturing the tonality of how space, and the moon in particular, were initially perceived when first voyaged, long before modern technology made it seem all spectacular and wondrous. Yeah, it is still all those things, but it's also presented very explicitly as cold, lonely, isolating, and deeply mysterious. No way in hell would I want to be up there in the way that it's shown. You need some serious brass balls, not just billions of fuck you dollars. There's just nothing glamorous about it. It's scary because these characters are essentially embracing what ultimately at the time was still largely unknown. The opening really cements this sinking feeling of dread, because it taps into both the excitement and apprehension of these men voyaging to the moon, knowing they have to make personal sacrifices to do something that is inherently dangerous as it is patriotic. They are just simple, devoted family men doing something they morally believe in. They see this as a necessity to protect their loved ones, so there is a personal drive to take on such a tremendous mission that could see them never return home. That sinking feeling then receives brutal clarity once they get deep into their mission, because it's quickly revealed that none of these men were aware of the true intentions of their mission, and were seen as nothing more than expendable assets sent to space by a faceless government who never planned to bring these men home. Now, while that sounds like a major spoiler, it is pretty much the basis of the story, as the film is bookmarked with a fictional conspiracy website called lunartruth.com, which for the record no longer exists, that, like with the Blair Witch Project and The Devil Inside, which came out the year after, was used as a marketing ploy to generate further authenticity. It establishes that the government covered up the failed Apollo 18 operation, and only now is it being unearthed to the public and edited into a condensed retelling of the main events, trying to detail what exactly happened to these three men, while exposing what the government were supposedly up to. For factual context, NASA did actually step in to debunk the film upon its release, out of fears that some people would inevitably take it seriously, because Apollo 18 was originally part of a series of planned lunar expeditions that were cancelled simply due to budgetary issues. As you brace yourself for the dire unknown, make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a cheeky we like to help feed the algorithm gods, and let me just take a quick moment to thank this video sponsor, VESSI. When I'm walking my dog Barney through the wet and muddy Irish countryside, it is inevitable that my feet are going to suffer the devastating consequences. At least that was until I started wearing VESSI footwear, which are truly 100% waterproof and snowproof thanks to their unique breathable Dymatex knitted material, which also provides dual climate support, meaning they keep your feet warm in the winter and cool in the summer. I mean, how does it do both? It's definitely some sort of magic. Seriously, in my experience, peak durability right here. After being cooped up indoors during most of the holidays, there's no better feeling than putting on a pair of VESSIs and seamlessly venturing out to relax, de-stress, and take in the moment without any concern for ever-changing terrain or discomfort, especially when wearing their new everyday move shoes, which I personally recommend for added support because it greatly benefits someone like me who typically finds themselves on a slippery slope. I rarely even see a reason to take them off, and with antibacterial insoles to keep them fresh, there are less problems for me to worry about. Hell, I even plan to wear them to a few formal events later this year. Don't judge me, if you were literally in my shoes, you would do the exact same. That is why you need to try them for yourself by clicking the link in the description box below and using my code HORRORHollinger to get $25 off your VESSI shoes. And now, back to the video. From a pacing perspective, Apollo 18 is not a demanding watch. Excluding credits, it's less than 80 minutes long, so it never overstays its welcome, and after a riveting and ominous setup, it kinda just gets right to the point, whilst maintaining a genuine mystery as to what the hell these men are actually up against. The thing is, the constantly escalating pace works in its favour because, while other found footage films typically get away with showing nothingness as a means to build anticipation and using the illusion of mundanity to make it feel real, Apollo 18 is perpetually restless. This is noticeably accentuated by the lunar module's cramped and claustrophobic spacing, creating a tangible inability to relax, bordering on unbreathable at times, despite being the one place we somewhat consider safe. However, if the men leave the entombed confines of their module, they're then just exposed to the vast openness of the moon to whatever threat is lurking about. In other words, they're either isolated or surrounded. There's never a point where they actually feel or even look safe. There is literally nowhere for them to go, and as things intensify, that sense of loneliness and eventual abandonment really stands out. Bear in mind, nobody bar the government and their NDA-bound families know that they're up there. There's no public awareness of the mission, it's entirely covert, and so if something does go wrong, poof, the government can just make the whole thing disappear. That's why the stress of the film is so palpable. Part of you wants to believe there's an out, but the opening makes it clear that is not going to happen, so you're basically just watching these two men ferment in their own oblivious doom. Anyway, let's talk about the alien life they do eventually stumble upon. To be honest, I think the horror is going to be entirely dependent on one sole factor. Are you scared of spiders? I mean, that is basically what they are. If rock spiders have no effect on you, then this reveal will probably feel anticlimactic. But with that said, I think how the film gradually goes about the reveal is haunting in its own right. Earlier in the story, both astronauts Nathan and Ben stumble upon a USSR module on the other side of the moon and begin to question why the government did not inform them that competition was already up there. Yet soon after, Nathan enters a strange-looking crater and discovers Russian corpses where it appears moon rocks have penetrated their suits. It isn't until something mysteriously attacks their rover and cameras does Nathan venture out to investigate, leading to a spider-like alien getting inside his suit. kinda like that scene from Evolution.
I'll get the lubricant.
There's no time for lubricant.
There's always time for lubricant!
Now, to be honest, I think this is where the film probably began to turn a lot of people off, because the second half does begin to feel more cinematic, let's say, in that it loses the naturalistic feel of the found footage genre in favour of a more dramatic presentation. Personally, I'm not totally against it, seeing as it is meant to heighten the stakes and accelerate urgency, but I do feel the authenticity is lost as a result, especially with the added sound cues that make the theatrics feel increasingly forced. At this point, it even enters into body horror possession movie territory, as Nathan becomes infected by the alien rock now embedded in his chest, thus leading to a paranoid conflict between both men, as Ben suspects Nathan's condition to be contagious. This is where the claustrophobia really begins to consume you, because not only is Nathan just exceptionally menacing with his increasing mania, but at one point after removing the rock from Nathan's chest, there's a few idle shots of the rock just scampering about in the background. You know when you see a spider in the corner of your room and then you lose track of it and you think to yourself, that little bastard could be anywhere? Well, being on this lunar module is what that begins to feel like. Again, given the film's short runtime, it quickly becomes this insane pylon of worsening dangers. Firstly, we're stuck on the moon, so nobody is going to save us. Then we have an aggressive alien virus on our hands. And then lastly, we have a literal carnivorous alien hiding aboard the ship. You can see where it takes immense influence from Ridley Scott's Alien, and rightfully so, but when you start to realize that there is more than one alien out there, it basically becomes that scene from the 90s Lost in Space adaptation starring Joey Tribbiani. It's a planet filled with alien rock spiders. In fact, when Nathan initially entered the crater where he found the Russian corpses, he makes a quick comment about how he can't find proper footing because the ground is too soft, and when you realize he was basically just standing on a nest of spiders, it is soul-shatteringly horrifying. At that point, I don't care. Burn it all down. The global warming has fucked us anyway. We might as well have two suns. Now, I will say I did have a theory in my head that we would end up seeing space zombies or something possession-esque given Nathan's grisly condition, but the whole alien virus angle doesn't really amount to much, besides adding some extra tension to proceedings. However, if you do want that kind of space zombie schlock, I actually think 2013's The Last Days on Mars works as a silly companion piece, because it also involves an alien virus plot where those infected transform into creepy monsters. It's not great by any means, but it's a bit of fun. In fact, now that I think about it, that movie takes its entire alien fungus plot from Ridley Scott's Prometheus, so what I'm really saying is, just go watch the Alien franchise. Anyway, in their last effort to escape, Nathan is taken by the alien spiders while Ben hides in the USSR module and attempts to contact Earth for rescue, only to be greeted with a massive nope. As said before, it turns out that the government were fully aware of the alien danger, and their ultimate goal was actually to collect the rock samples that the astronauts initially dismissed as unimportant, deeming Nathan and Ben's condition too high a risk to be worth saving. Yeah, it's literally the same plot twist in Alien. In that movie, it all seems like an incidental situation until the crew discover that the faceless company they work for intended for them to discover and transport the alien regardless of casualties unbeknownst to them. I mean, if you're going to rip off any alien horror movie, you might as well rip off the OG. Ben then attempts to communicate with his other crewmate John to return to orbit, while Nathan returns to break in but is now fully consumed by spiders, eventually being killed and dragged away by a big fuck off massive spider, and while launching back into orbit, the Russian ship is also filled with alien rocks. Obviously. Ben's ship then crashes into John's, and the film ends with this eerie, macabre epilogue detailing that each man was killed in an accidental crash and their bodies were never recovered, while some of the alien rocks that were recovered mysteriously went missing. and that is Apollo 18. It's a very simple, straightforward found footage horror that might not blow you away, but it certainly has a unique historical charm and some mature undertones that capture the essence of what makes this subgenre so spooky to begin with. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, stay away from the moon, and if you can do so, consider supporting the show on Patreon, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye!